What happens when a martial arts legend sits down with one of television's most controversial hosts and things spiral completely out of control? You're about to witness one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really happened here. The studio lights were blazing as Chuck Norris settled into the guest chair on The View, his trademark calm demeanor intact despite the circus atmosphere surrounding him. He'd agreed to this appearance to promote his new fitness program for seniors, but Joy Behar had other plans entirely. "So Chuck," Joy began with that familiar smirk, "you're here talking about fitness for older folks, but let's be honest, aren't you just capitalizing on all those internet memes about you? I mean, come on, Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, the earth goes down, that kind of silly stuff." Chuck's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Joy, I've dedicated my life to helping people improve themselves through martial arts and fitness. If some humor helps spread that message, I'm fine with it." "But, seriously," Joy pressed on, leaning forward with obvious glee, "don't you think it's a little ridiculous? A grown man in his 80s, still pretending to be some kind of superhero? When do you plan on hanging up the karate uniform and accepting reality?" The other hosts shifted uncomfortably. Sunny Hostin cleared her throat. "Joy, maybe we should focus on Chuck's actual program." No, Joy waved her off dismissively. "I think our viewers deserve some honesty here. Chuck, you've made a career out of playing tough guys in movies that, let's face it, weren't exactly Oscar material. Walker, Texas Ranger was more of a punchline than a serious drama. Don't you think you're a little old to still be living in this fantasy world?" Chuck's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "Joy, I've spent over 5 decades teaching martial arts, helping kids build confidence, working with law enforcement, and serving my community. That's not fantasy. That's reality." "Oh, please," Joy scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "You punch some boards and kick some stuntmen. Meanwhile, the rest of us live in the real world where actions have consequences and people can't just roundhouse kick their way out of every problem." Whoopi Goldberg tried to intervene. "Joy, I think Chuck has done a lot of good work with his programs." "Whoopi, stay out of this," Joy snapped. "I'm trying to have an honest conversation here. Chuck, tell me, when was the last time you actually helped solve a real problem? Not some stage demonstration or photo op, but actually made a difference in someone's life?" Chuck's voice dropped an octave. "Last month, I worked with a young veteran suffering from PTSD. Through martial arts training, he found the discipline and confidence to overcome his struggles and get his life back on track. 3 weeks ago, I helped a single mother in Texas learn self-defense after she was attacked in a parking lot. Yesterday, I spent 4 hours teaching kids in an inner-city program how to focus their energy in positive ways instead of turning to the streets." Joy waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, spare me the saint routine. You're telling me that teaching someone to throw a punch is going to solve PTSD? That's insulting to real therapists and medical professionals who actually understand mental health." "I never said martial arts was a cure-all," Chuck replied, his patience visibly wearing thin. "But discipline, physical fitness, and mental focus absolutely help people overcome challenges. Maybe if you spent less time tearing people down and more time building them up, you'd understand that." Joy's eyes flashed with anger. "Excuse me? I've been fighting for progressive causes and speaking truth to power for decades while you were playing dress-up in Hollywood. Don't lecture me about building people up when your entire career is based on glorifying violence. My career is based on self-discipline, respect, and protecting others." Chuck shot back. "Something you might want to consider before you attack someone you've never taken the time to actually understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Joy sneered. "You're a relic from a bygone era who can't accept that the world has moved past the need for your particular brand of toxic masculinity. We don't need more violence. We need more compassion and understanding." Chuck leaned forward slightly. "Joy, I agree we need more compassion and understanding. But we also need people willing to stand up for what's right and protect those who can't protect themselves. That's not toxic masculinity, that's basic human decency." "Basic human decency?" Joy laughed mockingly. "Like the decency you showed in all those movies where you solved every problem with your fists? What kind of message does that send to young people? That violence is always the answer? The message I've always sent, Chuck said firmly, is that you should exhaust every peaceful option first. But when someone threatens innocent people, you have an obligation to act. Sometimes that requires physical intervention. Joy shook her head condescendingly. That's exactly the kind of outdated thinking that's destroying this country. We have police and courts and legal systems to handle problems. We don't need vigilantes running around playing hero. Chuck's voice grew colder. And what happens when those systems fail? What happens when the police can't get there in time? What happens when the courts let dangerous people walk free? Do we just tell victims to accept their fate? We work to fix those systems instead of encouraging people to take the law into their own hands. Joy fired back. But I guess that's too complicated for someone whose solution to everything is a roundhouse kick. The studio audience was growing restless as Chuck's eyes hardened. Joy, with all due respect, you're sitting in an ivory tower judging people you've never met who face real dangers every day. It's easy to preach about peaceful solutions when you have security guards and live in a gated community. Joy's face flushed red. Don't you dare make assumptions about my life. I've worked my way up in this industry, dealing with discrimination and harassment that you could never imagine. I don't need some washed-up action star lecturing me about the real world. Then stop lecturing everyone else, Chuck replied evenly. You invited me here supposedly to talk about helping seniors stay healthy and active, but instead you're using this platform to push your political agenda and attack my character. My political agenda? Joy's voice rose sharply. My agenda is trying to move this country away from the gun violence and toxic masculinity that people like you have been promoting for decades. Every time some angry man decides to settle his problems with violence, he's following the Chuck Norris playbook. The other hosts looked mortified. Sarah Haynes attempted to change the subject. Chuck, maybe you could tell us about some of the specific exercises in your new program. No, Sarah, Chuck said, never taking his eyes off Joy. I think Joy has something she wants to get off her chest. Let her finish. Joy leaned back with satisfaction. Fine. You want honesty? Here at Island, you represent everything that's wrong with American masculinity. This idea that strength means domination, that real men solve problems through force, that showing emotion or vulnerability makes you weak. Young boys grow up watching your movies and think that's what being a man means. Chuck's voice remained steady, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the arm of his chair. Joy, in every movie, every television show, every public appearance I've made, I've emphasized honor, discipline, protecting the innocent, and using violence only as a last resort. If you actually watched any of my work instead of just repeating talking points, you'd know that. Oh, I've seen enough, Joy dismissed. Walker, Texas Ranger, where you played a cop who broke the rules whenever it suited him and always ended up in a fight scene. Missing in Action, where you solved international conflicts by shooting your way through them. Your entire filmography is a manual for toxic behavior. Chuck stood up slowly from his chair. The studio went dead silent. Joy, I'm going to say this once. You can attack my movies. You can attack my career. You can even attack me personally. But don't you dare suggest that I've encouraged violence or hurt children. I've spent my entire adult life working with kids, teaching them discipline, respect, and self-control. Joy remained seated, but her voice got louder. Sit down, Chuck. You're proving my point right now. A woman challenges your outdated worldview, and your immediate response is to try to intimidate her by standing up and looming over me. I stood up because what you just said was a lie, and I won't sit here and let you spread it. Chuck replied firmly. But since you want to talk about intimidation, let's discuss how you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to humiliate a guest on your show for no reason other than your own entertainment. Whoopi tried desperately to regain control. Okay, everyone, let's take a step back here. No, Whoopi, Joy snapped without looking away from Chuck. I want to finish this conversation. Chuck, answer me this. When young men commit acts of violence, when they think the solution to their problems is to hurt someone, where do you think they learned that behavior? From sensitive, thoughtful media, or from decades of action movies that glorify violence? Chuck's voice grew dangerously quiet. They learned it from a culture that abandoned personal responsibility, that stopped teaching right from wrong, and that replaced strong male role models with celebrities and social media influencers who have never faced real adversity or taken responsibility for anything in their lives. Joy laughed mockingly. Strong male role models? You mean like the character who solved every problem by beating people up? That's your idea of a role model? My idea of a role model, Chuck said, taking a step closer to Joy's desk, is someone who stands up for people who can't defend themselves, who faces danger to protect others, who maintains their principles even when it's difficult, and who takes responsibility for their actions, everything you seem to despise. Joy finally showed a flicker of uncertainty as Chuck moved closer, but she pressed on. What I despise is the glorification of violence and the toxic idea that might makes right. We're supposed to be an evolved society, Chuck, not some Wild West fantasy where the fastest gun wins every argument. And yet here you are, Chuck said, his voice now barely above a whisper but carrying clearly through the silent studio. Using your platform to bully and attack someone you disagree with. Tell me, Joy, how is what you're doing right now any different from the behavior you claim to hate? You're using your power to try to humiliate someone. The only difference is you're using words instead of fists. Joy's mouth opened and closed for a moment before she found her voice. That's not the same thing at all. I'm holding you accountable for the damage your career has done to our culture. No, Chuck said quietly. You're grandstanding for your audience at my expense. You invited me here under false pretenses so you could ambush me with prepared talking points. You've twisted my words, misrepresented my work, and made personal attacks all while hiding behind the claim that you're fighting for some greater good. The camera operators were frantically adjusting their angles as Joy stood up from behind the desk, bringing herself closer to Chuck's eye level. I don't need to twist anything, Chuck. Your actions speak for themselves. 30 years of movies where violence was always the answer, where women were prizes to be won, where complex problems were solved with simple force. Chuck shook his head slowly. You really haven't watched a single thing I've done, have you? In Walker, Texas Ranger, my character repeatedly chose talking over fighting, worked within the legal system, and showed more emotional vulnerability than most male characters on television at the time. But you don't care about facts, do you, Joy? You care about the narrative. Joy's eyes blazed with defiance. Facts? The fact is that your entire career has been built on perpetuating harmful stereotypes about masculinity and violence. And now you're here, in your 80s, still trying to sell the same toxic message to vulnerable seniors who should be focusing on peace and reflection, not learning how to hurt people. That was the final straw. Chuck's legendary composure finally shattered as his voice exploded through the studio. Enough! The word came out with such force that Joy actually took a step backward, her eyes widening in genuine shock. I have sat here for 15 minutes listening to you attack everything I've worked for my entire life based on nothing but your own prejudice and ignorance. The entire studio fell into stunned silence. Even the camera operator stopped moving. Chuck's chest was heaving as decades of controlled emotion finally broke free. You want to know what's toxic, Joy? Chuck's voice was still raised but now carried a tremor of genuine anger. What's toxic is using your platform to tear down people who have dedicated their lives to helping others. What's toxic is spreading lies about someone's work without ever bothering to learn the truth. What's toxic is sitting in judgment of people who have actually put themselves in harm's way to protect others while you've never faced anything more dangerous than a bad review. Joy tried to interrupt. Chuck, you need to calm down and... No. Chuck's voice boomed again, causing Joy to flinch. You don't get to tell me to calm down after spending the last 20 minutes trying to destroy my reputation on national television. You want to see the real Chuck Norris? This is it. I'm a man who has had enough of bullies like you who think your opinions matter more than other people's lives and work. Whoopi was frantically signaling to the producers. Chuck, please, let's just... Chuck whirled around to face her. Whoopi, with all due respect, your co-host has been allowed to run wild for too long. Someone needs to call her out for this behavior, and apparently that someone is going to be me. He turned back to Joy, who was now visibly shaken but trying to maintain her defiant posture. You said I represent toxic masculinity, Joy? Let me tell you what I actually represent. I represent a generation of men who were taught to protect women, not attack them. But you know what? You're not acting like someone who deserves protection right now. You're acting like a bully who has finally picked on the wrong person. Joy's voice was shakier now. You're threatening me on live television, Chuck. This is exactly what I was talking about. I'm not threatening you, Chuck said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that somehow carried more weight than his shouting. I'm educating you. You see, Joy, in all my years of martial arts training, I learned something very important about bullies. They keep pushing and pushing until someone finally pushes back. Well, congratulations. You found that someone. The other hosts sat frozen as Chuck continued. You said my movies taught people that violence is the answer? My movies taught people that there are consequences for actions. That good people sometimes have to stand up to bad people. That strength should be used to protect the innocent, not attack them. But you wouldn't know about any of that because you've never protected anyone in your life. Joy's face was red with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. I've fought for progressive causes my entire career. I've used my voice to speak out against injustice and inequality. Chuck laughed bitterly. You've used your voice to tear down anyone who doesn't agree with your narrow worldview. You call it fighting injustice, but what you really do is bully people from a position of safety. You attack people who can't fight back because they're on your show, in your territory, playing by your rules. He leaned forward, placing both hands on Joy's desk. But here's what you didn't count on, Joy. I don't play by your rules. I've been in real fights, faced real danger, and dealt with real bullies my entire life. And you know what I learned? Bullies like you only understand one thing. Joy's voice was barely audible. What's that? Chuck's eyes bored into hers as his voice became deadly calm. They understand strength. And right now, you're realizing that all your words, all your self-righteousness, all your platform privilege means absolutely nothing when you're faced with someone who refuses to be intimidated by you. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Security guards were moving closer, but Chuck ignored them completely, his attention focused entirely on Joy. You want to know the real difference between us, Joy? When I see someone in trouble, I help them. When I see injustice, I fight it. When I see someone being bullied, I protect them. But you create the trouble. You perpetuate the injustice. You are the bully. And today, for the first time in probably decades, someone is standing up to you. Joy's hands were trembling as she gripped her cards. Chuck, I think we should end this interview. Chuck straightened up slowly, a cold smile spreading across his face. Now you want to end it? After you got exactly what you wanted, a confrontation that would generate headlines and get people talking about your show? No, Joy. We're going to finish this conversation on my terms for once. He turned to face the camera directly. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed something that doesn't happen very often in today's media landscape. Someone finally called out a bully for their behavior. Joy Behar invited me here today not to discuss my fitness program or help seniors live better lives, but to attack me personally for her own entertainment and political agenda. Joy tried once more to regain control. Chuck, that's not. Be quiet. Chuck's voice thundered through the studio one final time. You've had your turn to talk, Joy. Now it's mine. I want everyone watching to understand something very important. This is what courage looks like. Not the fake courage of attacking someone from a position of safety, but real courage. The courage to stand up to a bully, even when you're outnumbered, even when you're on their territory, even when they have all the power. Chuck's voice became steady and strong as he delivered his final words. I came here today to talk about helping people improve their lives through fitness and discipline. Instead, I've had to give a masterclass in standing up to bullies. I hope everyone watching learned something valuable today about the difference between real strength and fake toughness. He looked directly at Joy one last time. And Joy, the next time you want to ambush a guest for your own entertainment, make sure you pick someone who's going to roll over and take it. Because you just learned the hard way that some of us fight back.